The Civil War had a terrible impact on the civilian population of the United States. Food shortages, fighting in cities, and infrastructure destruction made life unbearable for ordinary people. Thousands were forced to flee from their hometowns. Others, they were left to endure the hardships of occupation. Let's hear the civilians' reactions to the horrors of war. Louisiana refugee Sarah Morgan wrote in her diary,
"Whether 'tis nobler in the Confederacy to suffer the pangs of unappeasable hunger and never-ending trouble, or to take passage to a Yankee port and there remaining, end them, which is best? I am so near daft that I cannot pretend to say. I only know that I shudder at the thought of going to New Orleans." 3 miles from town, we began to overtake the fugitives. Hundreds of women and children were walking along, some bareheaded and in all costumes. Little girls of 12 and 14 were wandering on alone. I called to one I knew and asked her where her mother was. She didn't know. She would walk on until she found out. It was a heart-rending scene. Women searching for their babies along the road where they had been lost. Others sitting in the dust crying and wringing their hands.
Emma Balfour, an observant diarist, regularly wrote about what she saw during the siege of Vicksburg.
I hope never to witness again such a scene as the return of our routed army. From 12 o'clock until late in the night, the streets and roads were jammed with wagons, cannons, horses, men, mules, stock, sheep, everything you can imagine that appertains to an army being brought hurriedly within the entrenchment. What is to become of all the living things in this place when the boats commence shelling, God only knows. Shut up as in a trap, no ingress or egress, are thousands of women and children who have all fled here for safety. Then all the mules and horses belonging to this department, and all the stock of all kinds, for 15 or 20 miles around. The doctor thinks human life will be endangered by the stampede amongst these creatures when terror seizes them, for I fear we have not provender to feed them for long.
Mary Webster Loughborough was living in one of the many caves of Vicksburg.
I went regularly to work, keeping house underground. Our new habitation was an excavation made in the earth and branching 6 feet from the entrance, forming a cave in the shape of a T. In one of the wings, my bed fitted. The other I used as a kind of a dressing room. In this, the earth had been cut down a foot or two below the floor of the main cave. I could stand erect here, and when tired of sitting in other portions of my residence, I bowed myself into it and stood impassively resting at full height, one of the variations in the still shell expectant life.
Diarist Dora Miller was not able to get into a cave and had to find other shelter.
Most people live entirely in the caves, for there is no safety anywhere else. Indeed, there is no safety there. Several accidents have occurred. In one cave, nearly a whole family was killed or crippled. The churches are a great resort for those who have no caves. People fancy that they are not shelled so much, and they are substantial and the pews good to sleep in. We had to leave this house last night. They were shelling our quarters so heavily. The night before, Martha forsook the cellar for a church. We went to Henry's office, which was comparatively quiet last night. Henry carried the bank box, I the case of matches, Martha the blankets and pillows, keeping an eye on the shells. We slept on piles of old newspapers. In the streets, the roar seems so much more confusing. I feel sure I shall run right in the way of a shell. They seem to have 5 different sounds from the second of throwing them to the hollow echo wandering among the hills, and that sounds the most blood-curdling of all. I am so tired of a cornbread, which I never liked, which I eat it with tears in my eyes. We are lucky to get a quart of milk daily from a family near who have a cow they hourly expect to be killed. I send $5 to market each morning, and it buys a small piece of mule meat. Rice and milk is my main food. I can't eat the mule meat. We boil the rice and eat it cold with milk for supper. Martha runs the gauntlet to buy the meat and milk once a day in a perfect terror.
Enslaved workers also suffered from horrors of war.
One afternoon, amid the rush and explosion of the shells, cries and screams arose, the screams of women amid the shrieks of falling shells. The servant boy, George, after starting and coming back once or twice, his timidity overcoming his curiosity, at last gathered courage to go to the ravine near us, from whence the cry proceeded, and found that a Negro man had been buried alive within a cave, he being alone at the time. Workmen were instantly set to deliver him if possible. But when found, the unfortunate man had evidently been dead some little time. His wife and relations were distressed beyond measure and filled the air with their cries and groans.
Mrs. Clement C. Clay of Alabama told in her memoirs,
As times grew more and more stringent, tea and coffee proved to be our greatest lack. We were glad to drink potato coffee and peanut chocolate. The skin of the raw potato was scraped off to pare it might have been to waste it, and the potato cut into slices or discs as thin as paper. It was then carefully dried, toasted, and ground, and made into what proved to be a really delicious beverage. Our chocolate was made in this wise. Peanuts, or pinders, or goobers, as they were variously called, were roasted and the skin slipped off. They were next pounded in a mortar, when blended with boiled milk and a little sugar. A sparing use of this most costly luxury was also necessary. The drink was ready for serving, and we found it delightful to our palates.
from the memoirs of Henry Kidd Douglas.
I was crossing the main street of town when I saw a young lady, Miss Savilla Miller, whom I knew, standing on the porch of her father's house, as if unconscious of the danger she was in. At the time, the firing was very heavy, and ever and anon a shell would explode over the town or in the streets, breaking windows, knocking down chimneys, perforating houses and roofs. Otherwise, the village was quiet and deserted, as if it was given up to ruin. It gave one an odd sensation to witness it. Knowing the great danger to which Miss Savilla was exposed, I rode up to protest and ask her to leave.
I will remain here as long as our army is between me and the Yankees.
She replied with a clam voice, although there was excitement in her face.
Won't you have a glass of water?
Before I had time to answer, she was gone with her pitcher to the well, and in an instant she was back again with a glass in her hand. As she approached me, a shell with a shriek in its flight came over the hill, passed just over us down the street, and exploded not far off. My horse, Ashby, sank so low in his fright that my foot nearly touched the curb. Some cowardly stragglers on the other side of the street, trying to hide behind a low porch, pressed closer to the foundations of the house. But over the face of the heroic girl only a faint shadow passed through the house from the gable. She took refuge for a little while in the cellar. But when the battle ended, she was still holding the fort.
Reverend Jesse Cox, the Williamson County diarist, wrote in his diary both before and after the war that he was strongly opposed to the Union.
The war being over this year, the South being overpowered, have to submit to everything. They lost their cause by being divided among themselves, and many going over to the North. Lee surrendered to Grant on the 9th of April, '65, which they never would have done if they had been united. By such men, we have lost our property and liberty.
Nanny Haskins recalls the relationship between Montgomery County locals and the Union soldiers that occupied their homes.
That afternoon, Ma and I went up to see her Mary. I think she looks better than I ever seen her. She described her visit to us. She says that once while she was at her Union uncle's, the Yankees came and ordered dinner. Her aunt, being a warm Southerner, refused to give it. But her uncle, of course, consented and gave them the beefs. But her aunt, like all other Southerners, was determined they should not have it, and stepped into the kitchen and poured soap suds into their victuals. As soon as they found out what she had done, they insulted and cursed her in every manner. Some wanted to shoot her, others jerked loose her clothes. Mary said that they wanted to strip and tie her to a pole, but that an officer stepped forward and made them behave, and merely placed a heavy guard around her. Mary says that they did a great deal worse than that at some places. Can it be possible that such brutal conduct will long be permitted to be carried out? No, there is a just God in heaven.
One Tennessee refugee, Mrs. McDonald, remarked,
During most of the war, and always in areas being evacuated, everything that had wheels was in demand, and even a cart was deemed a prize. People took every conceivable style of conveyance, drawn by horses, mules, oxen, and even a single steer or cow. Train seats, aisles, platforms, baggage cars, and tops of cars were covered with passengers, and thousands had been left at the depot begging to come. People who could not get inside were hanging on wherever they could find a sticking place. The aisles and platform down to the last step were full of people clinging like bees swarming around the hive.
Forced to flee Memphis, Elizabeth Merriweather expressed what many families felt during the war.
I seemed all of a sudden to realize the desolateness of my position. Alone in the world with 2 children, driven from pillar to post, my husband off in the army, I knew not where. Surely it was a pitiable situation. I became filled with self-pity and cried as if my heart would break.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe and press likes.